So welcome to the Healing Conversation. This is the third Wednesday in a row that I've sort of stepped into this space, and each time has been an adventure for me. And I think tonight is probably going to be one of the biggest. I thought talking about abortion was going to be challenging. Honestly, the last session I did, I thought was going to be one of the most challenging one. In fact, I had considered, as I sort of have a list of topics I want to get through, way down the list. But of course, what happened in Texas sort of accelerated the importance of bringing that piece of taboo into the conversation. And with that in mind, I think tonight is going to be one of those really tender subjects as well. And it started this week with a post, and I've always, felt that the healing conversation was meant to be relational. It was meant to be real time with humans talking about the most challenging issues we're facing. There's a framework, but that framework doesn't serve any purpose unless it's being applied to a particular issue or a particular piece of the human story that we're trying to unpack. And over the last several weeks, as I've been, feeling into each session, I finish on Wednesday nights, and then it takes me until Thursday mornings to get the recordings rendered, and then I get them posted. And by Friday morning, I've closed the loop on the Wednesday night. And then I think, well, I won't have to think about this again until Monday or Tuesday, but now it's just full time. It's just become full-time. Starting on Saturday morning, my brain starts to process what's important in this moment. What can I do to bring more love to the world in whatever shape or form that wants to happen? And I thought I had it all mapped out for tonight. I was going to start to share the map of consciousness, which is a series of roadmap markers that have become rather obvious to me in the sort of path to consciousness. And I've shared them with lots of people now, and people say, oh yeah, I know what you mean when you say dark night of the soul. And they have a story. Everybody has a story about those moments where they begin to sort of see beyond the drama of their story, when they start to break out of the amnesia of who we are. And so I got that. All those slides were mapped out, and then I'll show you what upended the whole thing. I shared a meme on the Healing Conversation page, and it was a picture with some words. And so I'm going to read the words, and then I'll share the picture that went with it, and then I'll talk about what happened on the page and why it now is taken center stage tonight, because I think it is, again, everything is happening so fast right now, and the acceleration of chaos is bringing things to the forefront much quicker than even I am braced for. So here are the words that went with the meme I'm going to share with you. So it's going to take a lot of love, tons to heal the hearts of the hurtful experiences for many. It's going to take time to forget and let go of the messiness, prejudice, judgments, cruelty, separation, and lack of understanding. I believe it's possible. It's going to take patience, kindness, and compassion to repair families, relationships, to restore friendships and connections with work colleagues and within communities. I believe it's possible. It's going to take unwavering courage to stop living in fear, to look in the direction of unity, to take responsibility for who we've been during these times, to decide we no longer allow ourselves to be divided, and to build a new culture where our children and grandchildren have untouchable freedom for generations to come, where we never divide again. I believe it's possible. When we understand that fear turns into anger, and the only way to eliminate that fear is to love, we no longer hold on to disempowering emotions, blame, or judgments. There is enough love in this world to unite us all, to help us grow together. Reach out and tell someone you love them today, especially if that person made a difficult choice, different choice than yours. This is the most powerful gift you can give right now. These are beautiful words, right? There's nothing high risk or difficult. Hi, Niraj, welcome. And yet, when I posted these words, I got the most drama I've had on the Healing Conversation page since the very beginning of posting things. And I've probably posted, I don't know, 3,000 or 4,000 things on that page over the last 2 years. And so the image that you see here of the heart isn't what was actually included in the original meme. Let me show you what was. And so vaccine versus non-vaccine. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is a beautiful statement about where we can be. And yet it turned into a free-for-all, even though I tried to moderate a little bit and just said, hey guys, read the post again. It's not it's not about COVID, but you're making it about something it isn't. But if you want to make it about COVID, I would ask you to still read it again. Because what it's saying is, I believe it's possible that we can get past the divide. I believe it's possible that we can heal the separation that we're feeling right now. And the memes, people were posting images and all kinds of stuff was just flying. And so I deleted the post and I reposted it with this image and said, I'd like you to read the words out loud, study this image, and then look at this image too, and tell me if you feel any difference between those two images. And if you do, you know, let's talk about what that difference is. So let's you know, I ask people, it's an experiment. You know, I have my take on those two images. Is anybody willing to speak up about this? Like, okay, is there any difference in that messaging when you look at this image versus that image?
I don't see a difference.
Okay, Karen, you don't see a difference. Okay.
No, because it's two parts of a heart blending together no matter what their stance is. And that's all about love.
Okay. I love that take on it. Kent, how about for you?
Yeah, I wish I could say the same thing. I mean, I see the heart. I love hearts. But I see, you know, I see two people with their arms around each other, but two separate issues. I don't know. I don't see anything negative about it, but I don't see the two images as the same. I find it really interesting, Edie, that it would have been interesting to post it with just that heart image, yeah, and see what people would say. I'm sure you would get all positive stuff from that.
Yes.
If
yes.
you didn't bring in that other image.
Right.
Yeah.
If it had been posted with a picture of a heart or anything else, it would not have stirred any controversy. And yet that did.
When I saw that photo for the first time, I thought of myself and my wife, because that would be us, you know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
you're not the only friend I have who has made a different choice than I did regarding the vaccine. There are other people that I know intimately well that have made a different choice. And we are reaching a crescendo of crisis around this issue, where people have, it's becoming very angry and very messy and very litigious and very projected. And what I loved about these words is it said, we're not there yet, but I believe it's possible we can get there. I believe it's possible that we're going to be able to look back on this moment in time and have a different lens of perception on it than what we're holding right now, of who's right, who's wrong, who's good, who's bad, right? We're quick to jump to that place of projection. I'm curious, Lee, did you feel anything different between the two?
You know, I was surprised in rereading the post that it does not mention a topic or a specific divide. And I thought it was a good post either way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that my mind wouldn't have gone first to that had I seen it just with the colorful heart picture.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it is going to take a lot of love, and it's going to take a lot of accepting each other.
Yeah, there's some work to do. Steve Reagan, I'm curious. First, I just want to hear your voice. It's been too long. It's good to see you. And
good to see you too.
Do you have any impressions on this?
Well, I love the language of the post. And when you separate the post from a specific issue and it stands on its own, that's one thing. I am triggered by the picture with the unvaccinated. I know some people who have what I would say legitimate, intellectual, grounded reasons for not vaccinating. But they are in such an extraordinary minority. So when I see anything about unvaccinated, I get triggered. This is all mixed in with Trumpism and you know the ignorance, the planned ignorance of the American population.
Mm-hmm.
So when you would go back to the other picture with the heart, then it's yes, that I can say I want that to happen. You know, I want to be a part of that.
So imagine, if you will, that is a black and white man and woman kissing. And this is the 1950s. And somebody posted this same set of words with that image. Can you imagine how scandalous that would have been, right? So I share that extra layer because we have gone through so many different issues where we were divided and then we come together on things, at least the majority, right? We've grown up, we've matured, we've stopped looking for villains and victors. We've sought higher ground rather than getting stuck in the mud of our past. Niraj, how about you? Any words of reflection here?
You know, I think I didn't really carefully read the post, to be honest with you. So I haven't read the full thing, but I think, Edie, your posts are always, for me, are uplifting. And I think that sometimes the optics, and perhaps in this case, the optics took away from the message, you know, with the other, that one.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, but I think behind it, there's that sense of maturity that, you know, is a constant theme, which is of unity, right? And love and all. I mean, something that we were talking about on a weekly basis. So yeah, I think, you know, for me, I think there's so many issues, quite honestly, in the world right now that I haven't given too much thought to vaccines versus non-vaccines. I mean, it's just one of many issues, quite honestly, from refugees to, you know, to Afghanistan to everything else in between. So So that's just my take on that. But I do think that, yes, somehow, I thought that the pandemic would bring us closer together. It'd be like, I thought it'd be like World War II, to be honest with you, where we had one common mission, despite everything, we could all come together. But unfortunately, that has not been the case in the past 18 months. I think we need to, I think the topic of vaccination is a much more complicated issue than I have done the research on, than I give it credit. For me, I've always been automatically feel comfortable with vaccination just because it's the way it's brought up. Obviously, I think I was a bit alarmed that the vaccine got rushed out in the first year, and it got rushed out for many reasons, and I won't go into that as it was explained to me. I did some research on that, but yeah, I can see why people would get triggered. I mean, I think that it's another layer to unfold or to peel back to get back to the source and everything that we talk about. So that's just my humble opinion on that.
Thank you, Niraj. I'll let you mute yourself again, please. Well, it was triggering, and I sat with it and thought, oh, I wasn't triggered by it. I saw it as a hopeful message that we could get past where we are. And then I realized, what is my lens of perception that I have about this moment that is different perhaps than what other people are struggling with?
Edie.
Yeah. Oh,
Yes,
Cammie.
ma'am.
Hi, you.
Hi, sweetie. If I may, coming from a digital marketing background and understanding how the brain works when it's like, hitting a landing page, so to speak, and what the eye goes to, and therefore what the first impressions can be. I can see definitely how and you're asking what the difference is between your lens. Okay, you're coming from a lens of love and unity, and other people right now, switch it back, are in a place of that person on the right is wrong.
Right.
This is like, and even if it's not that, it's like there's the dichotomization of society right now, the separation, the pointing of fingers at each other and everything. It's I can certainly see why this image caused some of the responses that it did, and to keep people completely off the thread of what's actually being said. Because if you combine both the imagery and all the preconceptions and the triggers that are being brought into that from where most of America is at on this issue right now, and your eye scans this post and it pulls out things like hurtful experience, messiness, prejudice, judgments, cruelty, separation, lack of understanding, you might not get any further than seeing that image and seeing those words.
Right. Thank you. I didn't know you were here. So my
yeah,
screen.
I'm here. I'm still recovering, so I'm not going to have the lights on. But
I'm thrilled to see you. Thank you for showing up. Yeah. Is there anybody else I'm not seeing in the background? Because I'm getting only a limited 5 of you showing up. Is there anybody else there?
Lenora,
are you there?
Or Karen?
Yeah, I wish.
Karen's here.
Let me see if I can change the my grid. I can show more people if I
If you stretch open your share, then you get more people.
There we go. Hi, Lenora, welcome.
It's my first time here, but I did notice a difference in the pictures. I got triggered because that brought up my anger at people who aren't vaccinated. And my intention is to do that, to be love, and to be able to just have it be the way it is, and instead of wishing ill. But I do wish, I do find myself wishing ill on people who I feel are making the pandemic last longer. So that's where I was.
It's complicated, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very complicated. I had fantasies like Niraj and others that thought maybe, oh, this is going to bring us together. This is going to create an opportunity for us to, as I sat there sewing 800 masks last year, every mask, I was thinking, this is our way of showing up for each other. We're going to transcend the me and show up for the we. And I was like so excited about that. And then I saw people refusing to wear masks, even though public health numbers are pretty clear. And then I was like, well, we'll all get the vaccine and then we'll just be beyond this. And then that opened up a whole other can of worms. And now we're to the point where, okay, so I can live with your choice not to get vaccinated, but we have to test. And we still have these public health measures to stop the spread, right? And so I thought, well, then we could come to some consensus. We didn't have to agree about the virus, but we could agree to keep each other safe. That we could at least come together on some middle ground, some place where we could show up in balance between the me, personal choice, individual expression, and the we. And last week I took on abortion. And I thought, that was a big topic to take on, but there the me and the we is really clear. The line of body autonomy is really clear. My body, my choice, right? But when you're talking about a communicable disease, a virus, whether it's corona or smallpox or polio or any of the others that we've dealt with in the past, and the ones we are likely to deal with in the future as we are further and further out of balance with Pachamama, we're going to see our immune systems struggle to keep up with the adaptations of our ecosystem to survive. And so here we are in this really messy place where Americans are struggling to be kind to one another. I went to the grocery store this afternoon. About a third of the people didn't have masks on. I was like, okay, all right. Okay, all right. And I just breathe and I get through it.
I think the large problem with it is that people think this is a polio vaccine or a smallpox vaccine, like we think of how we've understood all vaccines to be historically, but it's not. No. And everybody who's out there vaccinated can still be walking around carrying it and giving it to everybody else who isn't.
Right.
They think they're vaccinated, so they're safe. I don't need my mask anymore.
I tell you, when they first announced, if you're vaccinated, you're not a spreader, I felt this huge weight of relief. And then they went, oh, no,
and then anxiety.
Not so much. As it turns out, you don't spread as much, but the Delta variant is more virulent and its spread rate is higher. And so, okay, so we do still have to keep wearing masks and still being cognizant of gatherings and, but we began to navigate that. But what has happened now has become, I think, a real revelation about the balance between me and we, individual expression and communal well-being. And when you're talking communal and a communicable disease, it's a different conversation than whether you choose to have an abortion or not, or whether you choose to take ayahuasca. We have laws for all kinds of things about individual choice and expression that want to stop people from doing that. And even I would argue sex workers. We should not be getting our mitts into people's personal choice, right? I'm a big fan of individual choice. However, when it comes to a communicable disease, it's different. And so we have to reach even deeper into our source code of love to navigate this. And I think it is a masterclass in love that's being put before us. How do we do this? How do we navigate? Because this is just the first of many things we're going to have to navigate. This is a virus, but I think about the fires that are coming and people being displaced and who's going to live where and how are we going to navigate that and where are we going to grow food? We're going to not be able to grow it in the Central Valley of California. We're going to have to grow it further north. How do those people feel about having their entire, way of being changed because of our climate shift? I mean, this is just the first of many ways we're going to have to adapt. And it is the one that is going to be the real tell of our ability to survive as a species, whether we can navigate this or not. So I want to take you through some slides and I'm not here to claim any particular truth, but my heart aches when I see people not even begin to move into the future enough to wish and hope and pray that there's a day where we can not hate each other for the choices that we're making, right? I continually, ever the optimist, hold out hope. Somebody said this is a terrible image. And I said, well, imagine a context around that image, that's a mother and son. And they both just had a test and they're clear. And maybe this is the first time they get to hug each other in a long time. Like they came together on a step in their healing process that could satisfy the me and the we, that could be the middle ground, the higher ground. And a couple people commented, yeah, I guess you're right. I could get there. So I want to just leave all that as sort of the the contextual stew that we're going to jump into tonight, because my daughter, I was driving with her today and she goes, Mom, I can't believe you're taking on this topic. And I said, well, I'm not. We are going to take on this topic because we are going to feel the brunt of whatever choices we make together here. And that's what the healing conversation has to be about. If we ask a question that ends up with individual expression getting squashed in favor of communal well-being, or individuals having say over the well-being of all, then we're not asking the right questions. If somebody has to win and somebody has to lose because of how we're framing the question, we're not asking the right question.
Exactly.
We have to ask bigger questions. Where we're headed now is a master class in sacred questions. How do we navigate from the right, wrong, good, bad construct of fear that we've been marinating in for thousands of years to that not middle ground, but higher ground? And so this slide I developed a year ago when I did a piece on the coronavirus, that I saw it as a metaphor, as a mythological representation of humanity birthing itself through the corona, through the crown, the crown chakra, the corona of the cervix opening up and us birthing ourselves, and that we would find the light that shines through the corona. This is an actual picture of an eclipse. And so that just the terminology corona felt so symbolic, so truly mythological to me in this moment. And it's what inspired me to sew masks and do my part, because this felt like the journey to that we were going there. And then shit hit the fan, and we are where we are now. And I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. But I don't want to live in community with humans that I love and not be able to have this conversation. I don't want to just go onto the mountaintop and ignore it. I mean, I've done it really well for the last year and a half. I live in a very isolated place. I can continue to be a hermit on the mountain and, you know, disengage from the conversation, wear my mask, do the grocery store once a week, and I'm done. You know, nothing needs to change in my life for me to feel safe. But there are a lot of people who are out there in the world every day who don't feel safe. And who feel like we missed an opportunity to come together to do the right thing for each other. So I want to, with your help, unpack this in a loving way, because there are people on this group today that made a different choice than I did. And I love these humans. I don't want this to come between us. So how do we navigate this? How do we do this in a way that actually brings us together? Because I believe that's what this is about. This is a lesson. Everything happens for us, right? Not to us.
Right.
So if this is happening for us, not to us, what in our wildest big picture imagination could we postulate as the reason why humanity needed to go through something like this? So I'm just, you know, I got
The mother needed us to start asking these questions of ourselves. There needed to be a catalyst to break through business as usual, the same way of doing things that we've always done, you know, the same patterns, the same trauma patterns being reenacted on each other, the judge, you know.
So in your view, life is happening for us, not to us. This and perhaps every other point of conflict that we're experiencing right now is in service to bringing us to a breaking point of certainty. That's where my head goes with it. Karen, what are your thoughts?
Well, I have found this to be a cracking open, and that's why the heart, when you have the heart with all that fire and love, and you could just feel the energy, and then you see these two women or people, one vaccinated and one unvaccinated, on both sides of the heart coming together. To me, that speaks volumes. I am unvaccinated, and in the process of all of this, I'm a functional nutritionist. I got tons of calls and emails, people asking me, what should I do? What should I do? And I believe many people were wise to get the vaccine. It saved their lives. And so I'm not anti-vaccine. I'm looking at what everything is about the person who makes that decision. And so many of my clients, I recommended that they get the vaccine, even if it was only for them to be able to live their life feeling like they did the right thing. So my mission, and what helped me immensely, was to identify with the person asking the question. Mm-hmm. And not be putting upon them some information I had, or some disinformation I had or they had, but was to look at where they were coming from and knowing their physiology and their health, but also knowing where they're coming from emotionally, because sometimes that was more important, was where they were coming from emotionally. So I look at this as opening up doors of communication. Because I'm unvaccinated, many people had a misunderstanding of where I stood politically. And it brought together some of my very conservative Trump supporter friends who knew I was on the other, more liberal side. We were able to engage in those kinds of conversations because we had the commonality of not wanting to be vaccinated. Their reasons are a little, mine's more physiology and theirs were a little different, but it allowed us to engage in conversation with outrageously different sides of the continuum, because we had something in common.
Right.
And that has blown open doors of communication and love and all kinds of things with people with the intent to do that. I did have COVID also, and in August, and so I'm very inoculated now. And but besides all of that, it's looking at oh, and Edie, absolutely, I'm 100% with, we need to respect the rights of others. Even though I've had COVID, I wear my mask, I distance, I absolutely respect and own my responsibility to protect those around me. And I think that's a missing piece with all of us that are resisting that accommodation to our neighbor, if you will. So I wanted to, say that when I saw that heart, it's like, oh, it's what's happening with some of my friends on the other end of the continuum politically that is bringing us together to have a conversation.
Right. I love that reflection. Thank you. Thank you for that. This is complex, and we are trying to solve this with a hammer, hammering on each other. And this is surgery. This is microsurgery. Threading the needle of love between different points of view is sacred work. It's seeing the context of this moment that we are living in, that we have for many, many years developed this distrust, and rightfully so in many ways, of our institutions. Our government has not been honest with us about a lot of things. Our medical community has not done the right thing for us for many years, but I don't think it's intentional. And here's a big picture view of it. She said, this is just, nope, this image, all of this is wrong. We can't, those people, they've made a mistake in their thinking. They're weaponizing their fear against us. And she sort of lost her shit about this. And I was like, okay, you got to go back a few years. And she goes, no, 100 years ago with the Spanish flu, we had the same thing. People were weaponizing masks versus no masks. And many more people died in the second wave than the first wave because of that. And we're seeing it replicate itself. So I could see why she went right back to that Spanish flu in 1918. However, I said, go back to the beginning of man. Go back to the beginning of time. Fear has been baked into our contextual framework, our construct of being since the beginning of time. Fear was a survival tool that helped us navigate the uncertainty of the physical world. But then, and there's some really smart people who've unpacked a lot of this, and I don't want to go into the detail here, but where fear became weaponized as a tool of coercion, as a tool of control, as a tool of keeping the engine of commerce going in a way that began to create this disparity between dignity of life for various humans on the planet. And now we're seeing our entire structure, our construct of fear coming apart at the seams. And the coronavirus is going to be a teacher for us. One way we're going to learn the lesson through love, or we're going to learn it through fear, but one way or the other, we're going to learn this lesson because we're already 660,000 dead into this lesson. At some point, we're going to ask better questions about how to navigate this than the questions we're asking right now. So I want to start every session with these 5 questions because they completely relate to every topic we're going to take. And I want to build sort of a library of questions in your belly that you begin to ask them whenever you see conflict in the world. So the 5 questions in the healing conversation came to me over time. They didn't come all at once. They worked me. This first one, was I ready for the healing conversation? And I was thinking, I'm 50. Yeah, I should be ready by now, right? I should be ready. Oh, I'm 53. I should be ready by now. 55. I should so be ready by now. Like there was this expectation of readiness, and I didn't realize until I got deeper into the work that I also had to deal with the willing and the able part. Oh, it's one thing to say you're ready, but are you willing to do the work? Are you willing to show up asking bigger questions of this moment? Are you willing to show up in search of the balance between me and we? Because if you can't claim that as your core belief system, then we can't have a healing conversation. We cannot have a healing conversation if we do not agree that love is our source code and that we are here to solve for X. X equals love. And in that pursuit, there is a natural balance between individual expression and communal well-being that must be met in this moment, or we will never be able to survive the suicide pact that we've engaged ourselves in. This fear has been weaponized for so long that we've just assumed that this is how life is, that we have to exist in a fear-based construct. And when you are living in a fear-based world, you are on armored guard all the time. We don't trust each other. The word that's missing from our entire story right now is trust. We don't trust communal well-being. Our government hasn't provided it. We haven't offered it up to each other. The word trusting trust has an edge to it. And I shared this during our last session, and it's just blossoming more and more in me day by day. This download I got working with a brother in a private, and it was fall in love with trust. Fall in love with trust that everything is happening exactly as it needs to be. Even all the crazy shit that's gone on before, all the conspiracies, all the beliefs, all the unconsciousness, all of it is bringing us to this moment to choose something different for ourselves. It's rather than attached to what got us here, to continually spin in the wounding of our story, to now transcend that wounding, to ask the bigger, broader, wiser, healing questions that we have to address in order to move forward. So the willingness, man, are you willing to show up with a heart full of me, we? With a willingness, and I loved what you said, Karen, about, I made my choice and I've supported others in that choice, but I've also recommended to those that have a fear about getting the virus, because fear can have its own detrimental impact on the body, to pursue their own heart, right? To feel safe in the world. If this is what gets them there, then, and then you said what I think is the me, we, yes, in your heart, which is you're willing to do the public health measures, the well-being measures to keep each other safe. And I believe where the anger, and Lenora, you don't have to come back in, but I hear it in your concern about, come on, can we not just come together on some basic trust about how to proceed till the end of the pandemic? Can we come to some agreements about what tending each other looks like? And we're not there yet, are we, Lenora? We are struggling mightily with this. So are we willing is a big piece. And then are we able? And this is, there are different groups of people in this, and unique expression within each of those groups. It's not fair to put everybody in a bucket, but there's 70% of us that have said, I'm okay with the vaccine, I'm okay with masks. I might, I look at California's voting numbers yesterday, and that's the vaccination rate and the recall overturned. We're about the same numbers. So there's some congruence between those, like, we really don't want to live in a state where these, public health measures are eliminated. We feel better having them. And then there's the group of people who have attached their truth to a fear-based construct that has political weaponization behind it. They believe that they're being manipulated. They believe that the vaccine is something that somebody did to them. It's that life happening for us, not to us. Not only do they think it's happening to them, but it's been perpetrated by a particular political group of humans, right? Like that's how far out we've gotten. My husband told me of a conversation just yesterday of within family members, a gentleman who firmly believes that Democrats created the coronavirus to hurt Trump. Okay, that's a conspiracy. I'm not ready to spend the rest of my life trying to unpack. I want to move forward from here. And that's, you know, this is the ableness is a question of how deep-seated is your fear and paranoia of what's happening in the world, that in order to feel safe, you have to assume that there is a perpetrator who's trying to, in some way, harm you. Like that's how deep the fear is. So this question is a big one, and we could loop around this for a long time, but I want to give you the context of this entire conversation because these questions are important. What would we have to believe about each other to live in harmony? Now that question started out as, do you believe we can live in harmony? When I went around to RV parks and asked people, they would say, I don't know. I don't know if we can live in harmony. There was this, yeah, I'd like to, but ... There was this resistance to that idea. And so I after a few RV parks, I said, I got to ask a different question. I want to unpack this further. And that's, you're going to see these questions evolve. And I believe this conversation tonight will evolve as we begin to watch this catalytic converter, for a different approach to that word, a conversion process that we're going through. We might ask very different questions 6 months from now. But I went in and said, what would we have to believe about each other to live in harmony? And I think the fundamental that we'd have to believe is that we would be willing to live by the golden rule. And it's really that simple, that you would do for me that which you would want me to do for you. And even in that, let's take the vaccine as an example. Let's say you were somebody that said, this is a hoax, it's not real, I'm not getting a vaccine, this is ridiculous, we don't need mandates, we don't need, you know, to have any public health measures, we're just going to let this thing run its course because it's all a hoax anyway. That's one end of the spectrum. And then there's the other end of the spectrum, which is I'm going to get vaccinated, I'm going to do public health measures, and I'm going to be careful, and I'm going to be cautious, and I'm going to do that because it's not only good for me, but it's good for the people around me, right? That me-we balance is achieved in that belief system. So even in that spectrum, the idea that we could come together on a golden rule, you would do for me, well, what you would do for me is say, don't get vaccinated. Right? You would want me to do what your choice was. And so this is where the golden rule gets even more complicated. Like when public health is concerned, and we have two very diverse perspectives, how do we navigate to higher ground? How do we move beyond this moment? And so that gets us to question number 3, because what keeps us from moving forward is our biases, our fears, where we attach certainty. And for many, they've attached their certainty to a political outcome. Others have attached their certainty to a religious political outcome. Some have attached their certainty to a spiritual belief. Some have attached it to an anti-government belief. Some have attached it to a institutional medical belief. Do you see? I mean, the spectrum is wide. The spectrum is very wide. So are we willing to fact check our fears, or believe it as so's? And, you know, I one of the comments from a woman yesterday was, I would never do the test because I'll get cancer putting it up in my nose. At that point, I just had to delete it. I had to delete it. I cannot accept that good-hearted doctors and scientists all over the world are out to give us cancer. Now, I believe that there have been products and ways of producing food that are cancer causing, and that we're now learning and detaching from all of that manufactured food, because we're seeing the impact on our generations of unease in the human form, dis-ease. But I fundamentally believe that there are good people out there who are not trying to give me cancer by using a nasal swab. So am I willing to fact check my fears? Yeah, I am. And I'm willing to suspend some institutional mistrust, because this has been such a global movement. This isn't just one pharmaceutical company telling us what we need to do. This is, somebody would blow the whistle on this process. Karen, do you want to say something?
Oh, there are scientists out there more or less blowing the whistle. It depends on who you read, but I don't think it's an easy answer. I think I agree as a non-vaccinated that I'm ashamed, maybe that's the wrong word, of people who have no respect for their neighbor or somebody else in their difference of opinion, and thus the masking, the distancing, being extra cautious.
Right.
I think is absolutely critical. But I read a lot of science. That's part of what I do in what I do, and so I'm reading changes in some of the things that have been said, and so I'm just watching things unfold. I'm reading as things unfold. I have a big issue with our focus on remediating instead of prevention in terms of our health and the planet, and loving and respecting the earth. And so anyways, I won't go any further. That's a mouthful already.
Well, but so the soup is getting muddier, right? Because if we were all
Yes, absolutely
healthy, we could have probably fought this off, no problem. But we are living on a very sick planet, and we have a very sick, shared, communal, physical system that, we've evolved to a point where we're living not as long or as well as we once did. And in other ways, we're exceeding those limits because of medicine. So, I'm weird. So right now it's like a snow globe moment. That was Timothy Leary's expression for his trip on LSD. It's like the whole world gets thrown up into space, and then it's gonna float down. It's gonna land in some new form or fashion, and I don't know where it's gonna land. I read something just yesterday, and I posted it because I've got to go back and read it again. But we're getting data. We're starting to see. When something is brand new, you can't make decisions on early data because it's just too early in the learning curve. But we're getting a little further down now, and what they're learning is people who had the virus and then got vaccinated have this superhuman immunity. I'm quoting the article. People who got vaccinated and then had a breakthrough also developed not as strong, but a super immunity to the virus. So that was like, all right, so maybe at the end of all this, what we're going to figure out is that it was both approaches. Like, we're in this massive petri dish right now. Some vaccinated, some unvaccinated, some got it, some didn't get it, some got it before, some got it after the vaccine. And then you stratify that across other comorbidities and environmental stressors and the economics of fear that we're living in right now. And so imagine the data set 5 years from now that we're going to be able to look back upon and really learn the lesson of this virus, but we're not there yet. We're not there yet. And so the data is, still being interpreted by different people. It's still being weaponized by other people. Like it is a messy stew. And so how do we love each other in the middle of all this? How do Kent and Edie survive side by side, aligned on 99%, and Karen and Edie survive side by side? Not just survive in the sense of still staying loving and connected to each other, but also how do we survive in our heads? Like I see people getting very angry and very upset with each other, and it's taking a toll on their well-being. And I'm sure you see it too. We see people lashing out angrily, violently at each other, spending hours and hours trying to prove their rationale, trying to find the right data point that makes their point. And imagine how much psychic energy is being wasted at a time when we should be expanding. When I used to work in the business world, I focused a lot on the reduction of muda, or as the Japanese call it, muda. It's sort of the Deming approach to manufacturing, and the reduction of waste is the number one principle of profitability, because waste doesn't serve us. We are wasting so much time and energy in the human experience fighting the construct, fighting with this resistance to healing, fighting with the ego, trying to cling to the old way of doing things. We get down the rabbit hole of who did it and why. And every time we chase why, we end up abandoning ourselves in the process. I'm going to share something real personal here. When I was molested as a child, it took me many, many, many years to accept what had happened and at whose hand. As a child, I wanted to normalize that. I did not want to accept the truth of that reality because it just hurt so bad that my father would do that to me. And that trauma has been a major part of my story my whole life. And not just the trauma, but the woundology that wraps around that trauma. The story of why did he do it, and the feeling of betrayal that went with that, the feeling of abandonment and rejection, and all the ways that we internalize trauma at the hands of our parents, right? So I've been unpacking this a long time, and medicine work has helped me tremendously. And recently I had a sit with Mama. And I've unpacked so much of this, but I knew that there was one more, maybe more after that, but one that I could feel into a layer of resistance to healing, which is question number 4. Do we love ourselves enough to heal? I realized I still had lots of biases against my own healing. And I wasn't worthy. Now I'm talking about me, but I want you to feel the bridge to we. We don't even believe that we're worthy of healing this trauma. And you know how I know it's trauma? Because whenever you see drama in your life or in the world around you, it's because we are dealing with trauma. And right now, the whole human expression is moving through thousands of years of passed on trauma, unconsciousness, layered on top of us into our bones, epigenetically changing our immune system, changing our physical well-being, because we are dealing with institutionalized systemic fear for the human story. We don't feel safe in the human condition. Many of us have sort of a general panic about being in the physical body. And mine started when my innocence was traded for love by my father. This is what children do. They leave a part of their soul behind to survive in the human experience. And so there's beautiful soul retrieval work, and I'd done that. I had a beautiful sister take me through the recapture of my 3-year-old, who's now very much in charge. If it isn't obvious, she's the one driving the bus most of the time when this channel's wide open, because she has a lot to say. Damn it. She's been watching these asshole grown-ups all these years just totally screw this up, and she just knows, right? There's this deep wisdom in all of us. Do you feel it in your belly? How you've been just holding on to that? God damn it, you guys, wake up, right? So I went and got her. She was the first one because she was the loudest. She was the most uproarious in my story, and I gathered her up. And then there was the 8-year-old who kind of really, she was the beginning of the depression. She was the one who checked out and would eat a bag of Ritz crackers every afternoon after school. That was her reward for surviving school, which she hated. And the weight started to go on. And the body started to fill out, and then all the attention the 12-year-old got, she just got so confused about sexuality and physicality, and her worth as a human was now categorized as a sexual being in the presence of her father. So I had to go get her too. And so all that soul retrieval was bringing all of those pieces of me back into an integrated state. But I knew, because I was still feeling some drama in my life, that there was another piece that I needed to go collect, and I didn't know how to do it by myself, because that ableness gets damaged when you give up that piece of yourself so early. At the time of the original wound, we oftentimes lose our ability, cognitive ability, to navigate out of it, because it was pre-verbal. I wouldn't have even had words to describe what had happened. All I had was the somatic memory of what had happened. And so I had to surrender to my body's wisdom. And in some ways, that has become kind of a superpower. So I can actually look at what happened and it kind of worked out okay. It was like a training ground for learning to trust the wisdom of my own body, to find the boundaries of my own story. But even with all of that consciousness about my timeline, my story, I knew there was another piece in there. And so Mama Aya brought me to the altar of my innocence. And she showed me, she let me reconnect with that little baby girl before she was ever molested, before her innocence was traded for safety and security. And there was just such the 3-year-old, the 8-year-old, the 12-year-old, the 62-and-a-half-year-old. Mind blown. What a different lens of perception I could have on myself and the world when all my parts were integrated again, when there was not any more, I didn't need to know why. I just wanted to move on past the why. I just wanted to be in the presence of me without any of the wounding, any of the story of the wounding, any of the why or what happened or even the who. You reach that point where you're just so tired of carrying the story of grief, of mistrust in the human experience, that you're ready to give it all up. You're ready to love yourself enough to heal. And so then Mama said, but we're not done with, because you have his energy in your body. So I'm going to show you his moment of innocence lost, and I want to show you who he was before he lost his. And then there was just this beautiful light that moved through my body, and this kundalini energy that just wound itself up my spine from my root to the crown. And there was just this movement, this energetic movement, this shaking that went on for quite a while. And then there was just this soft, gentle, not cry, but tears of almost joy and release and just softening of the human experience. And I share that story with you because that can happen to humans across the board. Everything that we experience in the healing process individually is a recipe for healing the human condition. Can you feel that? Yes. And so, do I love myself enough to heal? Fuck yes. Because I'm not chasing why I wasn't lovable, because I know I was lovable. I know that I was beautiful and pure and holy and sacred and tender and innocent. And I know that you were, and I know the people who voted differently than I did, are also. I saw my wound and my father's wound as the collective wound. We are all navigating this human experience, trying to move past this collective wound, trying to give birth to something that is so overdue that there's an ache for it. There's a beckoning and the becoming of it. There's a depression for the lack of it happening, because to see it, to know that it's possible, to have felt it in your very sinews down to the bones, to feel that healing, and then look around you and realize that the rest of the world isn't there with you. It is a lonely fucking place sometimes. And so we end up feeling kind of discouraged and frustrated. And we look for ways to wake people up, and we go down rabbit holes of trying to figure out the why so that we can prove the point. And I can tell you that that is a lot of injury to the soul. I know, Kent. I love you, brother. And I feel you struggling with this piece of it. I spent most of my life trying to understand why my dad did what he did. And now I don't care, because I know that he, in his pure essence, would not have done that to me. But he was reacting to what had been done to him, and reacting to what had been done to his grandfather and his great-grandfather and his mother, and all the set and setting of his story. And in that moment, you can kind of look at the past and go, all right, yeah, it was messy and people did shitty stuff, and some was deliberate and some wasn't, and some was, you could almost categorize as evil, like there was a essence of malice there. But at the same time, look at the construct that we've been living in. We were all born innocent, and yet some people went one direction of projecting that fear out into the world, and others went inward. And this is where we see addiction. This is where we see depression. This is where we see that inner struggle to make sense of this world, right? So this question, do we love ourselves enough to heal? Ask that in terms of the coronavirus, and you can you see how complex this is. Do we love ourselves enough to be willing, and are we able even to transcend the past and the choices we've made that got us here, to come into this me-we balance? So what is your role in the healing conversation? And this is, falling in love with trust, that this moment is exactly as it needs to be to help us move into this next layer of awareness, collective self-awareness. So how do we individually navigate this? How do we ride this wave? And so will you allow yourself to be lived and loved by life is the bonus question tonight. This Are you going to resist this chaos to such a degree that it's going to rip you apart, or are you going to just love it for what it is, that it is like a labor pain? It is a contraction of the old story that we can then expand into the new story. And so this polarization, you going one way, me going the other, removes all the nuance in the middle. And so it's Michael Mead, I share this often because I want you to begin to think in metaphor. He says end times is not Armageddon. It's not the apocalypse. It's the word end means to unravel. The fabric of society is unraveling right now. And it's in service to each of us grabbing our thread, our truth, and then coming together to weave a new story, one based in love, not fear. So you and I are on two different sides of the thing. And the words that I got up at 4:40 this morning and did a download for you, because it was, how do we thread the needle of love between us? How do we weave that new tapestry that brings us to that beautiful, not a fear-based story, but a love-based story? What does this love story look like when we can let go of the past and show up in the present? And I use this term that we're first responders on the scene of the crime of forgetfulness. Like, humanity is forgotten. And some of us woke up and remembered sooner than others, and some of us are in different degrees of remembering, and that's the healing journey. There's no switch that we get to. Somebody asked me the other day, is it like going to happen all at once? I think it was you, Kent. Like, are we just going to have a day where everybody goes, oh, I get it now? No. It took us a long time to get to this level of layers and layers. Have you ever bought one of those woven blankets, and the top is the feature of the blanket, but if you turn it over, sometimes the underside is even more interesting. Like, it's got all of the threads that are different colors that sort of play into the tapestry. Like, we're looking at the underside of the tapestry right now, and it doesn't make sense to us. So we are living in interesting times. And so I like to remind myself every day that love is the fuel. It is our vital force. It is our source code. And I know that because my biology confirms it. We don't thrive as a species without love and connection. Our biology is sort of the backdoor hack to the human operating system that brings us back to our source code of love. Free will is the vehicle. You choosing and me choosing. And the meaning making is the road we choose to travel. And the meaning making of all of this up till now has been about fear, survival. We've been operating from our amygdala, our lizard brain, our reactionary, fear-based, keep me safe part of our thinking process. It's hijacked us to such a degree that we cannot even come together on what survival looks like as a species in a pandemic. The very fact that we're having this level of dissonance tells me that we have been set up for so long that it would be so Pollyannish as it was for me to believe that this would bring us together. Like, we just have to go through this breakdown to the point where we hurt each other in our choices. That we get so far down that rabbit hole of me and my right and my autonomy that we forget about the we. This is Mama rebalancing us back into the we. So this quote came through today. The whole world yearns after freedom, yet each creature is in love with his chains. This is the first paradox and inextricable knot of our nature. We have accepted and attached to the chains that were handed to us, the fear-based construct that we are living in. Meaning making is what gets us the fuck out of there. That's what breaks the chains. How we contextualize the human experience. As Einstein said, do you believe we live in a friendly world, friendly universe, or a hostile universe? I believe we live in a friendly universe that has lost its way. But that's part of the growth. That's part of the movement from light to dark. That's how we birth ourselves. If you think about how love grows, it grows through trial. It grows through experience. It goes through loss. Like, we came to have a physical experience of love, a boundaried experience. Where do I end and you begin? Where is the we and where is the me? Where do I get to individually express and where do you get to individually express? And how do we individually express in a construct, a civil society that allows us to do that? We don't even have that available today. Does that make sense? But it doesn't mean it isn't possible. It's the meaning making we attach to all this. So for me, my big toe, my big theory of everything is that, and when I had the pulmonary embolism, I had the experience of being on the other side, that there was no pearly gates in heaven or hell or judgment. There was only love and light. And I've met that same space in my body through medicine work, and now I can just breathe myself there every once in a while on a really good day and just hold the reality through my central nervous system that we are one, that we are all the same energy, that we share. Here's the irony, right? We're sharing breath. You breathe, I breathe, we're breathing the same oxygen that our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and they breathed fear into the world around us. Dr. Emoto did some beautiful studies of the vapor that comes through our breath, and you can see how dysregulated, discordant those images are when the words of fear are applied to that water crystal. But when words of love are applied, you see that harmonic sacred geometry come into the expression of water. So this is physics 101, that we're breathing the same oxygen of a fear-based world. And here we get a virus that asks us to wear a mask and not breathe together. I mean, let's just step into some mythology for a moment. Doesn't that feel like that's a pretty interesting mythological tale we get to tell ourselves, right? So the meaning you apply to every aspect of this experience, and mine is life is happening for me, not to be, can give you the heaven or hell of this moment. So we can either get stirred up by the trauma loop that's happening all around us. This collective trauma is coming to the surface, and it's going to get louder. It's going to get nastier before it gets better. We have been spoiled for so long to live in a relatively peaceful environment. And yet we're what's going to happen on Saturday? What's going to, like, people are like, the Second Amendment is the ultimate out of balance with the me, we, right? Like there's how do we ask different questions to arrive in a world where we all feel safe and where we don't get that safety at the cost of another, right? That's what we're riding right now, is that line of trust with each other. So it's going to take a perceptual shift. And I love this image. It's a real picture. That's a real rock, real trees, real water, real dirt, real grass, but it doesn't feel right. Study it for a minute. There's something off about it. It doesn't, like, all the elements make sense, but the context of it, the perception of it is off, and you're right. Now look at it right side up. We cannot even imagine a healed state for ourselves because we are in an upside down perceptual shift. We are in a fear-based lens of perception right now. So in order to transcend that, to expand beyond the fear of this moment, we have to look inside ourselves. And this is this piece of solving for X individually and collectively. So right now, in the old construct, we'd be talking about, well, where's the middle ground? Is it wearing masks? Is it agreeing to testing? Where's the middle ground? And we're trying still to negotiate nuance, but we're so far apart. And the idea of coming together relies on trust, and we just don't trust each other. We don't trust the human experience. And yet, it is this movement of falling in love with trust that becomes our entree to consenting to the human experience. When we're born and when we die, that first and last breath is the bookends of the implied consent. Like, you're here in a body, you said yes, you're here. But there's a middle spot somewhere in your timeline, and maybe it's now, and maybe it's collectively now, that we have to say, it doesn't matter how we got here. What we're here to do is clean up the mess on aisle 3, so we don't keep looping through the old story, the woundology, how we got there, looking for who to blame and who to hold accountable and who to, like, safety is in here, it's not out there. No amount of information from outside is going to make us feel safe ever again. That's a big statement. No amount of information from outside of us is going to make us feel safe. Does that make sense to you all? Can you just own that truth? The only place that's going to make you feel safe is inside of you, where you're grounded, where your trust is, and it's in your body. And I love, I have a hunch. I could be wrong on this. I'm ready to be wrong on this. But 3 to 5 years from now, we're going to look back and say, wow, that was a hell of a petri dish. Here's what we learned. But in the meantime, I still have to live in a golden rule existence with my neighbor. And so I'm trying to seek higher ground. I'm not somebody who says, I won't spend time with you if you're unvaccinated. No, we got a middle ground. We can, if you're willing to get tested and I'm willing to get tested, and that way we're both safe, then I'm willing to spend time with you. There is a higher ground for us to reach right now that is frustrating a lot of people that we aren't there yet. And so I am, we aren't going to negotiate to higher ground. We got to navigate this together. We're navigating to what X looks like, and imperfect people will come up with imperfect solutions, but people with open hearts will figure this out. And that's what I hold my heart open for, is that we can figure out how to do this. And if we start looking at the virus as a teacher, we would be so much further along in this process than where we are now. But instead, we're looking at it as a weaponized tool of coercion, one way or the other. And so we're going to struggle with this. So I said on one of my Wave Street sessions that I wasn't sure I could ever get to unconditional love. So when I read this, I was like, oh, okay, maybe I can't. So, dear human, you've got it all wrong. You didn't come here to master unconditional love. That's where you came from and where you'll return. So unconditional love is there are no boundaries. We're all one. There are no conditions, no points of separation. Condition is a separation. There's no difference, but we wanted to learn all the aspects of love. We wanted to feel, smell, taste, touch, experience a physical world. We wanted to know where your love shows up and where my love shows up, like in a physical world. Like, that's what we signed up for. So you didn't come here to master unconditional love. You came from that, and that's where you're going. You came here to learn personal love, universal love, messy love, sweaty love, crazy love, broken love, whole love, infused with divinity, lived through grace of stumbling, demonstrated through the beauty of messing up often. You didn't come here to be perfect. You already are. innocent and whole. You came here to be gorgeously human, flawed and fabulous, and rising again into remembering. But unconditional love, stop telling that story. Love in truth doesn't need any adjectives. It doesn't require modifiers. It doesn't require the condition of perfection. It only asks that you show up and do your best to solve for X. That you stay present and feel fully, that you shine and fly and laugh and cry, hurt and heal and fall and get back up and play and work and live and die as you. It's enough. It's plenty. And if you want that for yourself, then here's the inescapable truth. You've got to want that for others too. And if some of our behaviors are causing others to not get the chance to die as themselves, not get the chance to live, if my choice is causing somebody else to be harmed in some way, then I am not living the golden rule. After all this is over, what will have mattered is how we treated each other. So this whole thing got kicked off with this idea of activated consciousness, that we're here to really feel into consciousness as a verb, that we're here to be architects of love. And I'm reading David Hawkins' book right now, and so I'm kind of swimming in this calibrated scale of expression. And what I didn't realize is I'd seen this, I've used this in my teachings before, but reading the backstory on it now, they looked at words and they through behavioral kinesiology began to test across thousands of people, thousands of testers, thousands of testees, all these different words, and where they fell on a spectrum was courage. If fear is 100 as a baseline, is desire 100? No. Is it 125? Yes. Is it 150? No. And so they calibrated across thousands of people through visceral kinesiology, the body of truth, knowing where truth comes from, words and how they're expressed, and how the whole construct of the protocol that they used, they calibrated states of being against what we call sort of a vibrational scale. And so I look at everything below 100 here, and grief, apathy, guilt, shame, hopeless, words like evil, vindictive, miserable, humiliation, eliminate, all of these, you can see these are wounding words. These are projections. These are doctrine of dominion words. These are words that create dysregulation in the human experience versus co-regulation, this ability to sort of soothe and be at ease with each other. As we move up the spectrum, you're starting to get into pride and courage, but it's not until we get to this neutrality and trust that the arrow begins to go in the other direction. There's a momentum going one direction versus the other. There's a momentum to negativity. There's a momentum to positivity. There's a momentum to fear. There's a momentum to love. And when I began to really get my head wrapped around this, it was like, oh, this momentum starts inside each of us. This is that butterfly effect, Kent, that, the whole breathing together, the whole belief that we can be as one together. So this neutrality, like, I can't tell Kent he's wrong. I can't tell Karen she's wrong. All I can ask is that, can we have some agreement about the we? And I've gotten blasted by people, spiritual people, saying, how dare you wear a mask? It's just gotten too confusing, too messy, and I don't want to engage. I don't want to defend. So I'm trying to unpack it through a different lens. And it's unpacking this lens of fear one layer at a time. It's too big an elephant to bite off all at once. We just have to go where it shows up in our interpersonal relationships one at a time. When we fail to recognize how fear works in the world, we become ruled by it. We are ruled by it right now because we don't understand that fear is a malware. It is not our natural way of being. Many people believe that eliminating the apparent causes of fear will eliminate it, but fear, like beauty, is part of the world. The fear of fear results in the growth of terror, as well as loss of the beauty and wonder of the world. By fearing fear, we create the room for terror and panic to grow, which is where we are right now. People become blinded by fear, driven by anxieties, and increasingly ruled by phobias and obsessions. When we fail to recognize how fear works in the world, we become ruled by it. The point is not to become paralyzed with foreboding or be caught in the panic that can grip the collective and cause people to run blindly in the wrong direction. The point is to willingly go where most fear to go, to follow where the fear might lead and face the ways that the world roars at us. The only way we move past this fear is by showing up with love. And so I'm going to just sort of end with a story. This is part one. Next week, I'll take you deeper into the maps and the landmarks and all of that. But I really want you to feel into this story. The elders have sent me to tell you that now is like a rushing river. And this will be experienced in many different ways. There are those who would hold on to the shore. There is no shore. The shore is crumbling. Push off into the middle of the river. Keep your head above the water. Look around to see who else is in the river with you and celebrate. You're in the river with me. We may not agree, but I'm letting go of the shore of who's right and wrong in this moment. I'm letting go of the shore of certainty because it's crumbling. All the certainty around us is crumbling. And like I said, we might look back 5 years from now and say, oh, Kent was the smart one. Or we'll look back and say, Edie was the smart one. Or more likely, we'll say, wow, what an interesting experiment. We learned a lot. We also lost a lot of people while we were on that learning curve. And let's figure out now how to not do that again. Let's ask better questions up front. Let's never again politicize the well-being of all. But that's truly where we're at, is we have politicized the well-being of all to calling it socialism, to calling it communism, to labeling the golden rule as something to be resisted. So I think we have to go through this big breakdown, but I'm not willing to hate anybody in the process. I'm not willing to be consumed by why anybody did what they did or how we get out of here. All I ask of people, and I guess it's the best I can do between now and the other side of this pandemic, is if we're going to be in close proximity, I ask for a test. And if you can't meet me in a test, that's okay. I'll see you on the other side, but I still love you. You know, that's you're going to have your boundaries, your physical boundaries. The me-we mess is going to go on for a while. So let me just stop there and open it up, and I'll stop sharing. Stop share. There we go. And come back and just oh, I see. I love these comments. Thank you. So, all right, my loves. So where does that land? Where does that leave you on the question of how do we solve for X in this moment?
Your voice left off a word. Could you ask the question again, Edie? Because there was
a glitch.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do we solve for X equals love in this moment, knowing that we are flawed, that we're basically set up to fail in this moment? It's going to take a tremendous amount of courage, personal courage, to not engage in the polarization, to not get sidetracked and triggered by what's happening. How do we hold this through the lens of love? Ken, you jumped in.
Yeah, I was just going to say that to get there for me, that graphic that you shared that we talked about starting off, you mentioned it could be a mother and a son, but for me, I mean, there's so many issues that I don't see eye to eye with people on. And if I can just see one of those people being me, and that other, whoever I don't agree upon, be that other person in that graphic, that's where I need to get, instead of just saying, like you said, I mean, when I'm in my head, it's like, why can't people just fucking wake up, right? And that's where I am. It's like almost everybody in the world, I have to say that to. So I'm in a dark place, but if I can visualize myself in that graphic, when something comes up, I can visualize that graphic and just go, okay, let me come at it from a viewpoint of love. And if I do that often enough and over time, it might just end up being that second graphic that I come to. Wouldn't that be blissful? So.
Can I offer you, and you and I, we've danced this dance together a few times, and so I want to give you another layer to just sit with for now. I always say in the healing conversation, don't commit to anything, because all these questions require far more than we think we're answering yes to in the moment. But here's what I want you to consider. That as certain as you are about what truth looks like for you, you've attached your well-being to proving that truth about something that's outside you. And, and because of that, you are physically, emotionally, spiritually suffering, because it's so important to you for the world to wake the fuck up. And here's the truth. We're going to get there when we get there. Each person is responsible for their own journey. There's, I mean, I could argue that I should just stay home and keep all my thoughts to myself and not do these Wednesday night things. But I think it's important that we don't abandon what we believe, but we find a way to ease into a new way of being with each other without having to be so certain that ours is the one right way of seeing things. Because Karen is a non-vaxxer, but she sees it differently than you do, Kent. And I love you both, and you both love me, and I don't lose any sleep over needing to prove to either of you that I'm right. But you're losing sleep and well-being trying to prove to others that you're right. And this goes back to a place, a deep wound in you somewhere, where being right meant being safe. And so this is your moment to meet your innocence where it was lost. And so this is a very triggering time for all of us to meet our fears, to meet our triggers, to meet where we've allowed anger and grief to rule the day. Like, look at the picture behind you. You're living, you got a good life. You got a good life. Don't give any more of it to things that don't bring more life to you.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't get the virus, but you picked up a whole other bag of shit from all of this that's hurting you. And I love you. So it hurts me to see you hurt. Yeah. So
Life's happening for me right now.
yeah. look at all the ways you lined up your life. And I know we've had this conversation to show up at this moment, at this time, the calculus of you, all the inputs of you arriving at this moment in time. I think your brain is brilliant. The way you love to research things, the way you like to deconstruct and understand how things come together. Leapfrog the moment with me, please, and apply all that incredible intellectual prowess to the problems we're facing, not the problems from the past. This is what, all hands on deck, first responder behavior looks like. I can't fix the past. All I can do is show up in this moment, triage the moment, and take every bit of my accumulated sense of who I am and the wisdom that comes with that and apply it to this moment. And if you wake up every day saying, how am I going to solve for X in every situation, including loving myself, you're going to have a very different experience of what's happening right now. And as it gets crazier, and it's going to, this is going to be your daily breath. Every breath is solved for X. Every breath is awareness. Ram Dass's every moment mantra is loving awareness. Where can I bring more love to the moment? Where is there love? And it's all around me all the time. I want that for you.
I want it for me too.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
get there.
You're getting there. It's messy, but look where you are. You show up again and again and again, ready to do the work, willing to do the work. You are a hard-working healer.
I'm enjoying the journey anyways. It's hard, but
Hey, you know what?
progress is fun.
Let's just get clear about this. Let's put a timeline on this. It's going to be messy till the day we all die. It's going to be messy for the next generation and the next generation. So how do you survive in a world full of this level of messiness? It's to go to the love. It's to find the love all around us in every moment with every human that we interact with. And maybe getting all the answers, like I thought maybe we could come to some agreements tonight. I'm realizing that's not going to happen. All I can do is set my own boundaries and say what is safe for me. And here's what I would ask of others is that they be willing to take, I'm willing to take 100% responsibility for keeping myself safe. And that means I set boundaries and I wear a mask and I distance and I walk away from scenarios where it was promised to be one thing and it was another. Or I feel into the moment and like, what does my inner guidance system tell me is okay about this moment? But I take responsibility. It's the people who are saying, I'm not going to do that, and I'm not going to take responsibility. With every truth comes consequences, comes cause and effect. And so we're gonna wrestle for a long time with this until we're willing collectively to take responsibility for how we're showing up. To come to the age of consent collectively is going to be the messiest work we've ever done. Or we'd have done it before. We'd have done it long ago, but we now have to do it because Pachamama's put a timer on our coming to awareness of how out of balance we are between the me and the we, the individual and the well-being of the planet and the collective, of which we are all one. All right, Karen, I know it's late for you, woman.
I just wanted to add a little piece to it. I have adult children who are married and they're all vaccinated and not with the same vaccine. And so I honored what their concerns were and recommended, what was a good match for them, which wasn't the same. And so I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I won't go into all the reasons, but it's more about body and the earth and regeneration, regenerative thinking and all that kind of stuff. But in the process of giving advice and in the end always saying it's your decision, the only way I can make a decent decision is to try to get into the head of that person and the heart of that person and to think, what are they feeling? Where are they coming from? You know, what's their history? So they formulated these ideas. And so based on that, then I can assist them with their journey so that they can still make their own decision. But at least I feel I have more information about how they feel and think with me removed.
Right, right.
And so that's in having to do that as a nutritional consultant has helped me with people in general, because sometimes I can be just like Ken with some of my attitudes, or, you know, historically having not the patience for anybody who I thought was an absolute fucking idiot. And but doing the getting in their head piece makes a difference.
Yeah.
And I'm still working on it constantly forever, even though I'm in my 70s. I know I'm going to be constantly working on it forever. Amen.
You know what I love is the shades of gray. Even you and Kent, you have your own lens of perception on the story right now. That's such a beautiful example of what is true in the world at large. And so Kent has certainty, Karen has certainty, Lee has certainty, Lenora has, we all have certainty. And if we cling to our certainty with such dogmatic zeal, we'll die in our certainty. But if we're willing
Certainty is that shoreline.
so certainty is the shoreline. Trying to hang on, and I'm just so Cammie, you jumped in. Give us some love, brother, sister, cousin, human.
We'll work on that one.
Yeah, I'm bad at that, but I'm learning.
What I come to is the, you know, underlying all of the feelings and, you know, the different needs to be right in order to be safe is, you know, it's like coming back to even when I'm just nothing to the virus, you know, dealing with my parent and my sister and their worldviews, and having the compassion, having developed that compassion for self and through my own trauma healing, and being able to hold that same compassion for where people are coming from, like Karen's been speaking into, you know, having that bigger picture, that higher ground of the compassion for what are the trauma stories that are informing where someone's at with this, you know. And if we can bring ourselves to a place where we can have that conversation from that bigger point of view, then I feel that we can find our way to higher ground.
Yeah, thank you. It's, you know, right now we have to interrupt the cycle of fear and projection.
Yeah, exactly.
And each of us has to take some responsibility in the perpetuation of it.
Yeah.
And that's all we can take responsibility for, is how we're contributing to the divide right now. Yeah, thank you. Niraj, you can jump in.
Yeah. So, gosh, there's so much I want to say. I feel like, you know, my heart's full of love right now. I just love it. I think that, you know, even though there's Kent and Karen, I think there's opposing views, the way you guys are doing it in such a beautiful way, not shouting, because that's a lot of what I've come from, is a lot of shouting when people have disagreements, you know. It's so refreshing, honestly, and it's such a testament of the safe space over here. That's kind of what I've been kind of blown away by. for the past 3 weeks. For me, what was the question, Edie? Like solve for X?
Just,
I don't. Yeah.
you did it.
Yeah. So for me, I think I'm just being curious. I'm trying to be open-minded. I know the vaccine is a big issue. I know my sister had a wedding in London about August 14th, and so we couldn't attend because of the vaccine, because of the virus, right? So yeah, I mean, it's definitely hit us, me personally, because of what's going on, and there have been a lot of frustrations on my end. I'm not, showing them tonight, but just at some point you're over it, you surrender, but and you move on. I don't know. It's an inward learning experience. Like, how do I change my response to this? How do I find Zen in my own way, have boundaries, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's where I'm at right now, and thank you.
Thank you, Niraj.
Share this.
Here, go ahead. Go ahead and mute. There you go. Niraj, I just really want to highlight what you said, this piece of recognizing that I can't change what's happening around me. All I can do is hold space for the potentiality that this is a gift that we just don't see yet, that there's more to this, that there's a perfection in progress right now that we don't yet see. We are giving birth to something. And a dear friend of mine, I remember we were at their house when she went into labor, and she got in the car and it was coming really fast. And she looked at me and her eyes were wide open and she says, "I don't think I can go through with this." And we laugh about it. We still, 30 years later, we laugh about it because, of course, there was no turning back. The die was cast. This is what was going to happen. She was going to have a baby. There was a story that was going to be written here and finished at some point. And for her, like, the pain came so quick. She was like, "Oh my God, I can't go through with this." Like, the choice to not go through with this was off the table when we came to this physical moment in time. We have to go through with this. And the only way through it is to go through it with it. You can't completely divest yourself, because we have a communal nervous system that links us all together. And right now it's fractured and it's raw and it's hurting and it's on edge. And I mean, I just going to the grocery store kind of sets me back a few days. I feel an energy every time I'm out in public that is hard for me to reconcile, because the lack of trust, the lack of community, the lack of connection that I feel with the world around me it's jarring to our nervous systems. We feel it. And it doesn't matter which end of the spectrum you're defending, everybody's feeling it. There's an edginess to this. And so I think back to the wisdom of trauma and that whole understanding that it isn't the trauma itself that is traumatizing. It's the lack of co-regulation, the lack of being met in the trauma, the lack of breathing. And the other night I had a beautiful download, and I just felt this sense of, patting myself like you would with a baby, like I'm kind of a baby whisperer. People will bring me their babies when they can't settle them. And something happens and I end up co-regulating myself. Like when I hold a baby, it's super healing for me, because I'm like loving me as much as I'm loving that baby. And so we got to show up as co-regulators to a very stressed out world. Like I went to the store today and I was determined to get at least 3 people to smile, even with masks on. "How you doing today? You having a good day?" And people like, "Oh, yeah, I guess you're talking to me." Like, we stopped even talking to each other with masks on. So yeah, we got to find the balance there. Lenora, I'd love to hear from you, and then Lee, and we'll wrap up for tonight.
Sorry, working off my phone and I'm not used to doing it. For me, my focus is going to be to spend less time on Facebooks, so I don't get into this story and hold anger, because that how that logo or the picture showed me, it's just like it was just triggering because I was projecting anger on. And also tonight I realized that, well, I've also, I know that I'm polar opposite, and I can't understand how a person who doesn't want to wear a mask or a vaccine, blah, blah, blah. I can't understand how they can hold that with all the facts about the deaths and blah, blah, blah. But I really got that we're all traumatized. The people, it's just the trauma. And we're in our fear, like you said, and the spinning inside ourselves that we can't, when we're not present. I think you said that too. And so I know that if I spend less time reading all the crap on Facebook or the news and stuff, that will assist me a lot in staying in my heart. And the thing that you said that was good was for me was that and I think part of the anger and the upset about the two poles is that I have a lot of childhood trauma, and I wasn't taken care of as a child, and it's like that's what I'm fighting up against. It's like, why aren't these people trying to take care of all of us? And I grew up being a person who's always looking out how to help people, assist people. I'm a we person more than myself. And that probably is survival too. It's like, how do I make myself valuable enough to be able to survive this? But so I can't understand that it's like two magnets, and how the force that just shoots you apart. And so I think staying on Facebook and getting into all that stuff, that I will be more open and just
so maybe can I just give you some thoughts on that? Yeah, social media can be very toxic, and I agree. Limit exposure for sure. And yet I found you here and you found me here, so there's still some really good stuff, connection. I tried to walk away from this platform multiple times over the years, and yet here we are using technology to dream into a whole new reality. So I'm honoring that. When you see the drama loop, anytime you see drama rising in your world, recognize it for what it is. It is unregulated trauma. It is dysregulated trauma now expressing in this huge drama across the planet, right? We're dysregulated with this planet, with each other, with ourselves. We've got layers and layers and layers of separation that we've got to heal, and it's going to take time, but somebody's got to go first. Somebody's got to transcend the moment. And so when you see people going through that crazy stuff, you don't have to be triggered by it. You can actually look at it and go, ooh, there's a lot of trauma drama going on there. I'm choosing not to engage in that trauma drama, like not just avoid it, because then you're just avoiding the trigger. What we're trying to do is move past the trigger, move past the reactionary behaviors and assault on each other, to move to that space of big picture, that we're birthing something, and we don't have a choice. We have to go through this now. The question is, are you going to go through it angry and bitter, or are you going to see the trauma drama for what it is and transcend that, to own a higher truth in this moment? Because what? Imagine now that we're not fighting about a virus. Now we really have to address climate change. And imagine somebody not being willing to turn off a leaky faucet when other people are dying of thirst. Like, imagine how much more intense this could become when we're not dealing with a virus, but we're dealing with air, water, food. Like, our basic survival is going to be put to the test here. And so do you show up ready to fight to the death, or do you die to the old story first so that we can live a new story together? And this is a moment to die from the old story, to not get swept up into the trauma drama of it all. Thank you, Lenora. Thanks for joining us tonight. It's lovely to have a new human in the storyline with us. We're building week by week. Lee, I always love your insights.
Hey, so something I know about myself is that I developed this belief at one point in my childhood that people don't help each other. And it came out of, I'd had some adverse experiences and asked for help from adults, and they did not help me. And so I know that I can get triggered by things and interpret it as people being unwilling to help. And for a time, the different views on vaccination was triggering that in me. And even in the face of seeing people do many, many things to help. And so in fact checking that, that's not what's happening. There are people who are not wanting to do the vaccine, but people who are taking public health measures to try to ensure that they are doing their part to help keep from spreading the virus. And so I think I'm pleased that I've gotten to this place where I can discuss different views on whether to take the vaccine and look at it as a more nuanced issue that it is. That being said, there was plenty of time when I was triggered and I was, saying, oh, catastrophizing about what will happen to people and who they've passed it to. And you know what? That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about people who all do want to help and do their part in some way. And we might have different ideas on how to do it. And I do think that discussing our ideas of what got us believing the way we are choosing is safe will help us in the future. A lot of our choices are based on distrust of something. And how did we get to that distrust? And what would it take for us to be trusting? So for me, what does it take for me to be trusting that somebody's going to do their part to not spread the virus and to keep themselves safe too?
Right.
And honestly, I've really just got to take their word for it.
And set boundaries for yourself.
And set boundaries for how I am willing to interact.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. And, there's a lot of fear-based acting out happening that I'm seeing from people who do not want to take the vaccine, and I do not want to force them to. But there are people who are doing things like coming into areas of the hospital that are not public areas or patient care areas, and harassing staff there and yelling and screaming. And,
So you
I
could,
do not accept that
Right.
behavior as somebody who is concerned about public safety. But I do not want to project onto somebody like Kent or Karen that their choice in vaccination would mean they would behave that way.
Right.
Absolutely not. I could not imagine it.
so imagine we as a human collective are coming into maturity from a very rocky, tantrumy 2-year-old, my way or the highway sort of behavior pattern, right? And so you're going to see a lot of people throwing tantrums, like, projecting and the drama of unmet trauma, dysregulated trauma, further, if you will, re-traumatized trauma. That's what's happening now, because we feel such a huge sense of betrayal for the human story. Like, how could we not take care of each other? How could we have not figured this out? Like the sense of global betrayal of how we got to where we are is real. And you get to set boundaries. And we get to say that's not acceptable behavior. You don't get to have your way or the highway. Like there's going to be some public policy that we all have to take responsibility for our choices. And if your choice is to be a spreader by design, then the communal well-being gets to say no. And so this is messy, and the reality is I can't change anybody else's mind about this. I've tried, and my mind won't be changed about this because I'm clear about the choice for me. And that's when I realized I'm fighting the wrong battle. There's no battle to be won here. There's only bridges to be built.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and when I really take out the biases and look and fact check my fears, that's all I want, is a bridge to be able to connect with people safely and accept each other. There was something interesting about when I was reading some of the comments on the post you initially brought up at the beginning of the session.
Mm-hmm.
And I was feeling a little triggered about some of the posts. But I was, deciding that's not what this post is about. That's not what this is about. I'm not, there's already been, I'd seen you had mentioned that's not what this post is about. So I don't need to respond to each and every one of these. That's already happened. But there was one comment that said, I believe natural antibodies
Yes.
are the best. And how interesting, because that is, from my perspective, exactly why I wanted to get this mRNA vaccine, because I wanted my body to have the head start by getting that bit of information to better make my own antibodies.
Right.
And
So
the statement of natural antibodies, I believe, applies to my way of handling my
your
public
well-being.
health self and my well-being. And it's just interesting that exactly those words
Could
from
be
my
applied
perspective,
from your perspective.
I say, yes, I agree. That's why I do what I did.
That's
And-
right.
And
This is the conundrum we're in. Is the lens has gotten so fractured through so many different perspectives that we could be saying the same thing and mean very, very different things. We could be saying very different things and mean the same thing. And that's why we have to be willing to have loving conversations about, well, what does taking care of the communal well-being look like to you? Instead of presuming what their answer is, to let them communicate, because this is the question. Can we navigate to higher ground? Can we navigate to that me-we balance? And so I'm gonna put a wrap on this tonight. I know, Cammie, you had another comment, but if you can hold it, thank you, sweetheart. There's a part 2 to this that really begins to, which was where I was going to go tonight originally, but I felt this conversation needed to happen first. But to really unpack how we got to this state of fear, this construct of fear, I think we have to sort of look at it, the woundology of our story, and how to, as Joseph Campbell would say, elevate it to the mythology of our story. And so next week, I'm going to take you through that path and share with you my timeline and talk about things like breadcrumbs to your soul and pivot points and leveling up moments and setbacks and clawbacks and moments of awareness and moments of forgetfulness. All the ways that we navigate this human experience individually is being played out collectively too. And so through that lens of appreciation for the majesty of our trajectory, we begin to just hold the whole story with a lot more love and compassion. And we don't attach to needing to be right about anything in the moment, just being present to what is in the moment and learning from every bit of it, because it is a master class in love. May it be so. May it be love. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here tonight. So good to have you here. Cammie, you wanted to say?
I just want to say thank you, and really looking forward to digging into that part too.
We will.
Yeah.
Love you, Karen. Thanks for staying up late.
Thank you for everything you do for us, Edie.
It's for me. This is how I stay sane. Honest to goodness, if I don't have a place to talk about love at least 4 hours a week, I get sucked into the sadness too. It takes me down. Yeah. All right, you guys, be well. Sleep well. Bye, Lenora.
Bye-bye.
Come again. Bye, loves.
Bye.